Okay, so let me ask you a question. What do you think Venom should be? What do you think Venom should look like, sound like? How do you think Venom should act? Now, which Venom adaptation comes to mind? Maybe Spider-Man 3's adaptation, maybe Insomniac's adaptation of the character, maybe even Tom Hardy's version of the character. All very different characters out and out, different personality types, different ways of speaking, different designs. They're all completely different, as if they're not the same at all. That's Marvel's Venom problem. Now, to deduce why this is a problem in the first place, we really have to dig deep and understand Venom at his core. Realistically, Venom is one of those characters that probably has had some of the most left field and weakest so-called adaptations in his entire lifetime. Now, yes, I want to just put this forth. I'm all for adaptations and differing characters. Like, for example, Jonathan Hickman's version of Ultimate Spider-Man that is coming out right now is completely different to anything that we've seen from Peter Parker before. But it comes a point where an adaptation of a certain character completely devoids anything from the source material, and that pretty much means that that character isn't anything like they originally were, meaning that they could pretty much be a completely separate and original character. And one comic book character that is guilty of this is, of course, Venom, because he's had so many different adaptations that we've kind of lost who the character is in the first place. So who is Venom? What should he actually be like? So before we discuss why it's a problem, we're going to have to understand who Venom actually is from his early comics. Venom from the early comics is witty, comical, and often spouts one-liners just like Spider-Man does. Even in his early years where he was more of a, I guess you could say, horror threat, he still would spout these one-liners. His personality was quirky, and he'd always have something to say back to Spider-Man. He was Spider-Man's match, and Spider-Man could never come out on top of him. His main motive over the years is basically just to kill Spider-Man, and this was obviously because the symbiote was ditched by Peter Parker and it wanted to get revenge. So paired up with Eddie Brock and then ended up hunting Spider-Man. Which is where we get into the main portion of what people remember from Venom's character in the 90s, which of course is from the Venom Lethal Protector storyline. When I first read this storyline in preparation for a fanfiction I did over on LewisFilms, it actually really surprised me and actually caught me off guard how different Venom's character was from the likes of Marvel Spider-Man 2 and other adaptations that we've actually had over the last couple of years. And in this video, we're going to be using Marvel Spider-Man 2's Venom as a case study and comparison to the original comics Venom to how much they actually differ. And now that we understand kind of how the comic character actually worked and what his main motives were and who he was as a person, let's just do the same, but let's do a rundown for the Marvel Spider-Man 2 version. So in this version, he is just purely a raging monster who wants to take over the world. He wants to cleanse the world by giving it a symbiote invasion. He has no reason to kill Spider-Man. Yes, Spider-Man gets in his way, but there is no main motive for him to go and kill Peter Parker, despite him terrorizing him throughout the third act. And of course, this version of Venom isn't actually Eddie Brock, it is of course Harry Osborn. Now, as you can see, these are two completely different characters. And I don't mind adaptations, as I said at the start of the video. In fact, my whole channel, whenever we discuss adaptations, I am all for doing adaptations and doing things differently for a certain character. I mean, if every adaptation of one character was the same, then it would get pretty stale pretty quickly. But the issue is that I think you have to keep the core ideology of the character at the center of the story, or else that character is just completely different and basically shouldn't be that character, if that makes any sense. So for example, it's like if you take Peter Parker and you take the Uncle Ben story out of the character. If Peter Parker doesn't learn with great power comes great responsibility in any way, shape or form, then he isn't Peter Parker. This is why I believe the MCU version of the character is actually pretty good, even though people say, well, he's not because the Uncle Ben moment doesn't happen. It does, but it just happens later on in the story, and it happens with Aunt May. So yes, the MCU version of Peter Parker is still Peter Parker because it covers the basis of his main ideologies from the original source material, even though the rest of the character is very different from stuff we've seen before. Now, the same can be applied for Venom. However, the main motive of wanting to kill Spider-Man that makes the character who he is from the comics is completely gone. Also, in the comics, it's worth noting that Venom is completely against the symbiote invasion. When the symbiote invasion ends up happening in the comics, Venom is firmly against it and even teams up with Spider-Man to help take down the symbiotes. And this hasn't happened once, this has happened multiple times. Like, I'm pretty sure there's some kind of symbiote invasion happening right now somewhere. I mean, it's always happening. But in Marvel Spider-Man 2, Venom is all for the symbiote invasion. As far as the comics go, Venom from Marvel Spider-Man 2 might as well just be a completely different symbiote. Like, he's not Venom in the slightest. Even though I'm a big advocate of making Harry Osborn Venom for that kind of story, because it works, I still don't believe it worked to its fullest, because he just wasn't Venom. He might as well have been someone else. And this is the Venom problem, because the Venom character has been so twisted and so turned in a way that he's not even Venom anymore. The idea of Venom can be anything from a raging monster to a sympathetic and comedic anti-hero. And when you don't have a distinguished trait for a character, are they even the character in the first place? Are we just assigning the name Venom to random characters now? Like, what's going on? However, there has been one adaptation as of recent that has actually done the comics justice. And of course, that is actually Tom Hardy's Venom, surprisingly. Yeah, the Sonyverse actually wins for once. Who would have guessed? Yeah, the Sonyverse Venom is actually pretty good because it takes the quirky and really comedic nature of Venom's personality and adapts it into a very likable and lovable anti-hero. Yeah, he still kills people, but he's also against the symbiote invasion, which is pretty good. Like, yeah, this is Venom. This is actually Venom. The only thing that Tom Hardy's Venom is actually missing is Spider-Man himself, and Spider-Man is a massive part of Venom's history, whether people like it or not. A big part of Venom's history is him wanting to kill Spider-Man because Spider-Man ditched him, and he feels lost, and he feels unlovable. And that's how the connection and friendship sprouts between the symbiote and Eddie Brock. That is how they come together, and that's how they meet in the middle. And obviously the Venom movies are missing this, but apart from that, they're pretty close to the original source material. However, what is a perfect adaptation? What does that actually look like? Well, there's actually one perfect adaptation of Venom that I think we've actually gotten before, and that is the Neversoft version of Venom.
Where'd Spider-Wuss go? Spider-Wuss!
Now, some of you guys won't actually remember this because you might be a little bit too young, but if you've ever played the PS1 Neversoft Spider-Man game, this game has the perfect Venom adaptation. He's comedic, he's witty, he's funny, he's an anti-hero, but he's damn scary. And he also just wants to mess with Spider-Man. But also, when push comes to shove, when Carnage ends up coming onto the scene, Venom does actually sacrifice his hatred for Spider-Man for the greater good, and actually teams up with him to help take down Carnage. This is the perfect version of Venom, and if we were to get this in a movie, or a show, or a game, this would be really, really awesome. And I really hope we see some kind of Venom like this at some point in the future. But what does the future actually hold for Venom? Well, it seems like he's becoming more of just a hero now than anything else in the comics. So do expect probably, I'd say in the next 20 or 30 years, whenever they start making Venom movies again, or whenever Venom gets another show or something like that, we're probably going to end up just seeing him as a plain hero. But yeah, that is the Marvel Venom problem. They have a massive identity problem with this character, and they can't really seem to figure out what they want Venom to be. Marvel Spider-Man 2 has a version of the Venom character that is nothing like his original character from the comics, and that is going to confuse modern fans since that game is very mainstream, where in reality, that version of Venom is nothing like how Venom should be. But what do you think Venom should be like? I want to hear all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And do you have a perfect version of the character? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like this video if you did enjoy, subscribe for more Spider-Man videos, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care, and peace.